Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw Link from The Legend of Zelda. Of course, one of the most popular video game characters of all time. I put out by way of Facebook and Twitter the question, what character do you want to learn how to draw? And again, the answer was Link. So this is sort of a viewer's choice edition of my How to Draw videos. What we've got here are 3 horizontal lines and 1 vertical line. People often want to know what the distance is between them. It is 7.5 basically centimeters from the top line to the bottom line. That's 3 inches, and you just find the middle between those two, and that's pretty much how you get this configuration here. I'm going to refocus the camera, and we're going to start drawing the eyes. Alright, so I'm going to try a slightly different approach with this video. Instead of drawing a shape for the whole head, I'm just going to go line by line, starting with the eyes, and see how people feel about that as a method for drawing one of these characters. So in time-lapse, I'm going to go ahead and draw the lines for the eyes, and then come back and explain or give you some pointers about how to do it yourself. Okay, so notice the shape of the eyes, sort of almost diamond-shaped, pointing downwards toward the middle of the face. And, you know, I see a lot of different ways of drawing Link. I'm going to probably end up saying that a lot in this video. This character is drawn different ways at different times. And the one that I'm using, the version that I'm looking at, is, I believe, the Twilight Princess version. So my apologies if that's not the one you wanted to learn how to draw. But I had to choose one of them, and that was the one I went for. So notice the, as I said, the shape, this sort of slightly diamond-shaped approach, and then the irises are kind of a little bit of an oval, not perfectly circular. As always, if you want a somewhat relaxed-looking eye, you need for that iris to be tucked underneath, a little bit underneath that upper eyelid. Well, let's go ahead and start drawing the lines for the nose and the mouth. Okay, so this is where the chin is going to rest eventually, down here on this bottom line. The eyes are pretty much touching the middle line from the beginning of the video, and pay attention to where the nose and the mouth fall. The nose is a little bit past the halfway point, a little bit below it, and then the mouth is considerably closer to the nose than it is to the chin. The width of the mouth, maybe even less than the width of one of these eyes, or about the same probably, and that hopefully gives you everything you need to know to get all those lines in the right place. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw the contour of the jaw. Alright, well, the key thing that you want to pay attention to in drawing the lines of the jaw is the angle of this line. Try to maybe pay attention to the space between the mouth, make sure you're getting enough of a space there, while of course paying attention to the whole shape of the head. Now, normally, as I said, I would go ahead and draw the rest of the head, but it's going to be all obscured by hair anyway, so I'm sort of experimenting with doing one in which we just draw the bottom of the jaw and leave it at that. So hopefully that gives you all the pointers you need on that one. Let's go ahead and draw the eyebrows, which I would say are a pretty crucial part of this character. Alright, now this eyebrow over here is eventually going to be obscured by the hair, so, you know, I'm not going to really bother dealing with this other side of it. But notice the shape of these eyebrows and how they are fairly thick, and thicker at the top than they are down at the bottom. The angle, again, very important. These are what I call angry eyebrows, but really he's not angry so much as maybe determined looking in the final illustration. Or maybe he is a little angry. We'll just have to ask him. Link, how do you feel today, Link? One last thing that we can do here is add very quickly the lines, the folds of the eyelids. And not every illustration of Link will include these details. As I said, there's so many different variations on how to draw this character. I don't know, I've never seen a character that is interpreted so many different ways, has so many different incarnations. It's kind of interesting. Later on, I'm going to get more into the details of the eyes, but suffice to say, let's put a highlight here. This is going to be a little white dot on the, I'm putting it on the upper left side of each eye. And then the pupil in the middle of the iris is, it's not a tiny little dot, it's not one of these huge ovals, it's sort of halfway between those two, a little larger than the pupil of an actual human eye, but not too exaggeratedly so. So we've got these facial features in place. Let's go ahead and draw the ears. Now, the main thing I would say you want to pay attention to with the ears is the angle, the direction at which they are pointing. They're not going straight up, they're not going out to the sides, they're sort of between the two. And there's a certain width at the base, at least, as I said, in some of the illustrations. Different people are drawing the ears in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and, in real time, show you how you might begin to indicate some of the interior lines of the ears. Some of this gets obscured by the hair. Happily. Isn't it great when the hair covers up the ears? Then you don't have to draw all that stuff, man. Every character should have long hair. But anyway, you want to at least get a couple of lines in here that give some sense of the form of each one of the ears. And yeah, let's go ahead, speaking of the hair, and get some of the hair lines in place. All right, now this line here, this long curving line, is really the line of the hat, where the hat meets the hair, basically. And that is resting neatly upon that top line, again, from the beginning of the video. And then after that, you want to try to get this sort of triangular shape in here coming down. It stops about midway through the eyes from top to bottom. And then this is the interesting part to me, the sort of swoop of the hair. I always end up calling it the swoop of the hair. This one area passes in front of that line of the hat. The rest of it is really coming out from underneath the hat. So that's a little detail you could pay attention to. Again, the line of the swoop line coming down here, and this is passing just in front of, just in passing this line just as it nears the intersection of those two lines, and then it comes to a stop, right, almost like it's pointing at the pupil here, if you need a guideline for that. And I'm leaving this kind of loose here because the hair will eventually sort of break into individual strands over here in this area. Well, maybe we can draw, at the same time, I'm going to draw the hair that comes down by his ears as well as the lines of the neck and shoulders. And maybe we'll stop at that point with the time lapse and start getting into more of the details in real time. All right, so we've added these strands of hair that are at the sides of the head, just in front of the ears. And then you get the neck, the width of the neck, important to pay attention to, fairly wide, I suppose, by the standards of some of these characters. And you can always check the irises, maybe, as a guideline for where to draw the neck. And then the slope of the shoulders, another angle that you want to pay attention to. And the width, of course, of the shoulders, I'd say about 2 heads wide, maybe, is what we're looking at here. Now, one interesting thing that I noticed about this character is that, it's very common to have one strand coming down on each side of the head, but this character, I believe, actually has 2. There's like a secondary one, shorter one, in front. And I sort of had to look at a number of different illustrations before I could understand that this was a fairly consistent way of drawing the character. He has sort of like double strands along the sides of his cheeks, I guess what that is, upper sides of his head. So the double-stranded look, I thought, was pretty unique to this character. Now, I'm going to start indicating some of the structure of the hair. What this is really here, and this is fairly common for hair that's parted down the middle, is that you begin to show the structure of how the hair is looping around, like it's all coming from this one part over here, and then you can even begin to start indicating different strands, sort of breaking at the edge here into these different strands. And so, yeah, that's my approach to drawing hair very often. Start with a very basic shape, like that basic triangle, just to sort of figure out where I am, basically, how much space is going to be occupied by this. And then you go for the details that reveal more of the structure. As I said, fairly common, especially with manga or anime, when you're drawing hair parted to the side, you'll see this underside here coming up off of the forehead. The structure of the lines, and then up here they're sort of looping around and coming across. And, at the risk of being boring, I will continue to try to do all of this real time. The hair is a pretty crucial part of this character. And as I was saying before, I was struck by how many different variations there are. You look at, well, the character is drawn at different ages, and it seems like the hair changes as he moves through different periods in his life. I noticed that there was one, I think it's the Ocarina of Time, in which the hair seems to be parted in the middle rather than to the side. And that, I think, is quite unusual in terms of design. I don't know if I can think of any other character where sometimes it's parted to the side and sometimes it's parted down the middle. That's fairly unusual, and sort of interesting that they allow themselves the freedom. I like it, actually. They allow themselves the freedom to sort of reinvent the look of this character. When I was looking at the really young, sort of chibi-looking versions, I swear some of them had the hair parted in the opposite direction. And I thought, wow, this character really, variety is the name of the game, I suppose, when it comes to Link. And even the color, I noticed, seemed to be changing. You have a bright yellow in that chibi version, and then sometimes some artists seem to be making it lean more towards brown. So anyway, I'll look for responses in the comments section. You could write a dissertation on this subject, the various hairstyles of Link and what they signify. In any case, you can see me continuing to sort of divide these areas into individual strands, and you can see, like I was saying before, why I put a loose indication there, but really this is defined more by strands breaking into individual bits at the end here. And maybe that gives us all we need for the hair, at least the basic structure of it. And what I'm going to do now is move on to drawing the details of the eyes. And what I might do for that is to go ahead and switch to my trusty black Prismacolor. Give me just a second. Alright, so the eyes are, of course, pretty important to any character, so I decided to do this part real time, at least one of them. Let's do one of these eyes real time. Now, the upper eyelid is, the line is pretty thick and black, which, usually signifies thick eyelashes, and some people might even look at this and say, boy, that looks like a female character, since that is so often used by cartoonists to symbolize female characters, but it's just one of the aspects of Link. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm sort of thickening up the upper line and sort of this far edge line, and then having it go off into a point, a little bit of a spike there. But what I'm not going to do is go and underline this lower line. I found that was pretty much left fairly pale, not so fully defined. So let's go ahead and go into the iris here. I'm darkening this outline. I want to take care not to go too thick on the line around the edge of the iris, but I can go ahead and darken in the pupil. And in terms of shading, I noticed that, at least in some illustrations, this upper area all becomes pretty dark, so as to almost obscure that upper edge of the pupil. And then you get a sort of a gradient change in color as we move down away from the upper reaches of the iris. And I'm probably going to just switch, well, I'll do this right now. I'm going to switch to my Dixon Ticonderoga to finish up the shading. Now his eyes are meant to be blue, and if you're doing a black and white drawing, maybe best to just keep it light so as to have this read as possible blue eye. And I'm going to go ahead and just add a little more definition to the lower eye eyelash line, I guess you would call that, but again, leaving that not so fully defined. I'm going to lightly outline these eyebrows, and as in terms of the color of the eyebrows, I found pretty consistently that they are a little darker than the hair for most illustrators. I'm not so sure about that chibi version. Maybe they're still bright yellow. I was kind of curious as to whether that signified, you know, because sometimes kids when they're young, they have very blonde hair, and then they get older and it goes a little brown. I wonder if that was what was going on with those different versions. You know, there is one version of the game that I have actually seen. I can't claim to have played it, but we used to have Wind Waker for the GameCube. Remember the GameCube? Oh yeah, good times, good times. So I am a little bit familiar with the game in the sense of familiar with how hard it can be. I watched my son playing it, and boy, it was not easy. But of course, I'm from the wrong generation. Maybe I didn't play a whole lot of video games growing up, so for me it's all foreign territory. When I see people playing video games, I'm like, how can you do that? You're superhuman. May I have your powers? I've already switched, as you can see, to starting to outline some of the hair because I just decided to. I can't even explain why. I ran out of things to do on the eye, so here I am working on the hair. Oh, crilly. But basically, that is maybe all we have to do in terms of showing you how I use the black Prismacolor to darken things in. Maybe it is time. Let's go ahead and switch to showing at least some of the clothing. Even though this is not going to be really a video about that, I can give you some tips on drawing the collar, sort of the clothing that you can at least see in this part of the drawing. Alright, so again, different art incarnations of this character will have him wearing different types of clothing. But I do believe for the Twilight Princess that you want to draw him with this collar that sort of splits into a V in the middle, coming up here around the neck. And you don't really need too much of a thick line here at the bottom. I'm just sort of putting that in there to help myself understand the structure a little bit. And then, here's the key thing for his clothing, and not that hard to draw, happily. It's just the sort of lacing, I guess, that's holding that collar closed. Not sure if you have to pay attention to which lace passes in front of the other lace. I saw different variations, but as you can see here, the one that's going up to the upper right passes in front of the other one. I'm always paying attention to these little details. You really can't be too obsessive about that stuff in a way, because people really do pay attention. You know, like when they try to dress up as this character and so forth, they're paying attention to every little detail. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw, yeah, this is still in the video frame, the rest of this sort of secondary collar of his outer garb, if that's indeed what it is. And this also is sort of breaking into a separate thing. There's actually plenty of details on the clothing if you want to get into that. He tends to have a strap going across here that holds his sword. And no, sadly, I'm not going to draw the sword. Sorry, guys. This video is going to be plenty long without me drawing the hilt of a sword back there. So we're going to say that he set his sword down before he posed for this illustration. And maybe that's it for that. I'm going to go ahead and maybe just put a few lines for wrinkles here on the cloth. And let's pull way back so that I can draw the hat and finish that off. And that'll probably bring us close to the point in the video where I can move on to finishing off these outlines. Oh, one thing I just remembered. I saw an earring on one of these ears in a number of the illustrations. And so let me know if I've got this right. His left ear seems to have this earring. I don't know if it's both ears. Again, the hair sort of obscures this, but let me know. Am I right that he wears an earring? I don't know if he does in all periods of his life throughout his career or not, but that's an extra little detail that I noticed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and refocus, and we're going to draw the hat. Alright, so in this particular pose, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw sort of a simple line here on top, and then I'm going to have the rest of his long pointy cap sort of going off to the side. And it's a little bit weird because it looks as if there's a strong wind blowing his hat, but not disturbing his hairstyle. I don't know, maybe he uses a lot of hairspray? That might explain how that happens. But let me go ahead and in time-lapse, I'm going to draw the basic guidelines of the hat. All right, so we've got the basic shape of the hat here. It's, of course, one of these pointy hats, but there's a certain width to it. It's not like not like a witch hat or something that comes to a tiny little tapering point. This one has a certain thickness at the end of it, and you know, by drawing it bending a little, you suggest the you know, flexibility of it. Now, I noticed some of the artists were drawing a second line here for the structure, and then sort of an interesting thing way over here at the tip. I couldn't exactly explain what this was, but it seems to separate into a shape that has two parts to it, sort of shorter here and then longer here. Not exactly sure what that is all about. In any case, that gives you all the lines that you need for the hat, and I think it's time for me to go ahead and switch to my trusty black Prismacolor. Oh, haven't done that for a while, have I, guys? And in time-lapse, I'm going to go ahead and finish, it's sort of like inking, really, what I'm doing with this. I'm going to finish all of the final line work, and then maybe come back and say a little bit about the shading before I get into that. Alright, so I've gone over most of the lines with the black Prismacolor, and I'm going to do just a little bit of shading here, real time. Now, you know, his hair is supposed to be blonde, at least in the majority of the illustrations I saw, and so what that means to me is I don't want to go in and shade too much all over the hair. I want to keep it rather light looking, but these areas right here that you see me shading in can stay, or, you know, can get a little bit of darkness in them just to at least give some feeling of form to this hair. But like this whole area in here, I don't think I'm going to start shading that in if I want this to appear to be blonde. I'm just going to sort of shade down towards the bottom. And, you know, depending on how detailed you want to get, you could go back in here and start doing lots of individual lines here for, you know, kind of each strand of hair. That's sort of your own personal preference. I think I'm going to sort of more leave a little bit of it to your imagination. And then maybe let me say a word or two about shading in the face. As I said, the nose in many of the illustrations I saw was mainly defined by way of shading rather than you know, line work. And so you basically are deciding where's the light coming from. Maybe you want to have it coordinate with the highlights, and so the light is coming from over here. That means that the nose is going to cast a bit of a shadow over here on the one side. And you know, some illustrators were making his nose very pointy. Others just giving it more of a subtle, rounded shape. So you can see that I'm holding my pencil kind of low to the page. Gets a wider section of the graphite touching the page. Also sort of, for me, it makes it easier to not press down really hard. If I'm holding this far back, somehow I find it easier to keep the pencil touching the page in a very light way, and that keeps it from going too dark too fast. So, yeah, in a way, I think the way you hold your pencil for shading can play a role in how dark the shading goes. Now, I want to do just a little bit here on the lips, defining the lips, again, mainly by way of shadows rather than line work. And as I said, you know, that the tilt of the eyebrows, normally this angle would suggest anger, but you tell me, does he look angry or does he look just determined? Or maybe a little of both. The shadow beneath the lower lip is pretty crucial if you want to indeed give sort of a fairly realistic looking mouth here. And then very often the head itself is casting deep shadow against the neck, so this whole area down here will get pretty dark. And then you're going to see in time-lapse in just a moment, I'm going to be shading in the hat a fairly deep contrasting, where do I put the accent? Contrasting. It's going to be much darker than the hair. That way we get contrast, interestingly enough, between these two different areas of the drawing. And maybe that's all I need to say for now. I suppose I could talk about how the ear is going to get covered up a little bit in shadow, logically, if the light is coming from this side. And it's up to you, really, to what degree you want to use shading to make him appear three-dimensional. You know, I'm going to kind of split the difference. I'm going to add a little bit of shade, but I'm not going to go crazy in terms of trying to make this look like a modeled, you know, fully three-dimensional drawing. So let's go ahead then and kick it into time-lapse. Call old man time-lapse in here to help me finish off this illustration. All right, well, the shading process is, of course, a long and time-consuming one, but the most important thing, I'd say, is to figure out where your light source is. If it's coming from the upper left, then all the shadows are falling on the lower right. But let's go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books. We've got Mastering Manga 1 and 2, as well as Miki Falls and Brody's Ghost, my 2 graphic novel series. I really am very, very grateful to those of you who support me by getting those books. But let's go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.